Welcome, everyone, to the Polarian series of webinars. Today's presentation is Application Lifecycle Management Comfort Zones and How to Overcome Them. Our expert presenter today will be Tim Strobelli, the Manager of Professional Services for Polarian Software. Tim has been with Polarian Software since the early days in 2004 and has successfully helped over hundreds of customers implement ALM tools that have improved their organizational processes. Tim also remains very active in the academic realm and is an associate lecturer with two of the leading universities in Stuttgart, Germany, where Tim lives. Tim's motto is to keep it simple but sufficient. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Nancy, for the introduction. Yeah, welcome everybody. My name is Tim and I will be the host for the next 40 minutes with you. And I would like to speak about ALM comfort zones. Before we do that, let me have a word about Polarion, the company. Don't worry, it won't be more than 3 to 4 minutes, just that you get an idea who we are, what we do. So Polarion was founded in 2004, and the first product came to market in 2005. So we are almost now 10 years of age, and in the meantime we have gained more than 1 million users working on top of Polarion every day, managing their requirements, test cases, change requests. Sometimes they use more than one ALM discipline. Sometimes they just focus on requirements management, intending to expand to other disciplines. So you can imagine that we need to provide a 24/7 support to our customers, what we do, and you can be assured that you will find somebody in your time zone. So when you have questions or when you want to get more information about Polarion or about the product, please don't hesitate to contact your local contact at Polarion. Maybe the one and most compelling difference of Polarion to other solutions in the market is that Polarion was built from the beginning as an open ALM solution, which means everything is integrated in one single platform, whereas other vendors in the market bought different tools and tried to integrate them and sold them as an ALM solution. But in the end, you had to integrate these tools. To manage these tools, they usually had different configuration concepts, different way how they can be implemented in your IT infrastructure. So that's one of the big benefits among many others that our customers value. And you can also see that the customer range is not specific to any area. So we have customers, major Swiss banks, to defense, to medical, to automotive, ranging from 5 users working with Polarion. Very often the small number of users come from highly regulated areas where you need to keep control over the artifacts and what's going on in your project, going up to more than 2,500 users, which is, for example, T-Systems, which operates their system on top of Polarion with many users in many, many different projects. That was all I want to tell you about the company. And if you want to know more, please visit our website. You will find much more information than I can tell you in these 3 minutes, because I would like to speak with you today, in the next 40 minutes, about these 3 topics, about jacket and jeans, about parents and kids, and about Greece versus Portugal, and how these things are related to our daily project life. So, comfort zone. When I started to prepare this webinar, I was thinking a bit about my life. If my life really is comfortable with all these electronic devices which became part of our everyday life. Just look around and see how many people have, almost everybody now, has mobile phones, and how we use them. We use them when we commute to work, when we come home from work. We even check our emails while we drive. You know, it's funny that in the meantime, we have already signs on the road telling people, please don't check your mobile phones. I mean, that's strange, isn't it? And even in the evening, maybe when you watch soccer or some movie and there is a break, you may start checking your email. So I was wondering, how can somebody tell me to leave a comfort zone? I would be quite irritated, not to say angry, if somebody tells me I'm living in a comfort zone. So actually, that's not the comfort zone I mean. I mean more like practices, ways, how we do things every day, how we got accustomed to specific way of doing something. We got so accustomed to it so that it's part of our natural way, and we don't question anymore if this is the right thing, the right way to do something. Think of it as a jacket, as your favorite jacket or your favorite jeans that you have. Every one of us have a favorite garment or favorite jeans that he wears. You open up the wardrobe and you see it there, the one, which may have already some scratches, which is old, which still fits and feels comfortable. You just feel good when you put that jeans on. And so you may even wear it in situations where it's not appropriate. Maybe it's cold outside, but you wear the jeans, or maybe you are invited to some event where you better not wear it, but it just feels good. And so I think this is just natural human behavior, that we use things which we like, we got accustomed to it, and so unfortunately the things we use, the tool we use, the practices we sometimes have do not always fit best to the environment. So one example, a pretty famous example, is MS Word or Office to manage your requirements. 80% of all specifications are still done in MS Office. Now, we may question ourselves, by the way, that's interesting, because we got all old with MS Office. Maybe some of you have already written your first thesis with Office. So there is a kind of relationship that we have with that product. The product grew older, we grew older, and we just like it. It's there, we use it. So what's the difference between writing a book and writing a thesis anyway? Apart from, or a book is probably more exciting than a specification, or some people may say that specification don't have more than 9 verbs inside, or somebody recently said they usually sound like the 10 Commandments. The system shall not, or the system shall do. We all know there is more to it. A book is usually written by one author. Maybe you have 2 authors. Whereas a specification, you have many people collaborating on that piece of information. We need to produce it fast. And so it is essential that we can collaborate on the same document. And we all know what this means in reality. If you have a document, usually this is sent to somebody, they make their reviews in the document, send it back to you, and then there's one poor guy who needs to merge all the information together. And is Word really the right thing to do that? Just imagine how much time that costs. There's another difference. For example, if you read a book, there are sections sometimes in the book in which the author describes the scenery, the landscape. Sometimes you just tend to skip that because, you still get the idea of the book. Whereas in a specification, we need to be very precise. We have to have full control over each section in the specification. Everything is important. We work together on that specification, and we cannot afford to miss something in that specification. So we need to have more granular control over what's happening. So let's have a look. And let's have a look at the scenario. So people working on the same document. I have opened here 2 specification documents in Polarion. And you see here the objects here on the left side. These things are requirements. And we may have somebody working here on top of requirement DP315. You see there is a unique ID for the object, and we can just, add, for example, let's add a little diagram here just to see that something is happening. Let's make that just here a little image of that one, insert it. And at the same time, we have somebody else working on a different part of the specification. And now, as the document is not anymore the object we're working on, but each object is a granular single object we can control, they can work in parallel on the same information, save their work, and they don't have to care anymore something interferes with somebody, you don't need to merge because everything is shared in a single place. And you see, it's just merging the information together, keeping the history, and allowing people to collaborate on the same information. So let's close this. Now, having all the information in a document is usually not enough for managing specifications because we need to keep control over these objects. So it is essential for you that you have a possibility to control every single section, the status of the objects, the responsibility, and that you can filter and search for information to understand what is the status of my specification, what is the status of each single part in my specification. So here we can see, for example, 24 requirements are already approved. Another point we've just mentioned is that when many people collaborate on the information, how do we communicate? With Office, probably what happens is that you send an email to somebody with your comments, with your review comments. Let me tell you a story what just some time ago happened in a project where we used Office. There was one guy, he sent the specification to different people, and he asked them to review. So what did 4 of the guys, they reviewed directly in Office. The 5th one, he added his comments in the email, not in the attachment. So the guy merged everything together. He just missed the email, and suddenly all the information was gone. It was lost. And also the communication was lost. Why is a requirement like it is today? Here, you can use comments to ask questions, to communicate on top of requirements. Now, do you have the same problem that sometimes you get emails where you are on CC and maybe the email is not really meant for you, but you read it anyway? I think that's something, I don't know, it's happening more and more often to me. So I don't like being involved in something I don't really need to read. But sometimes people just put others on CC because they want to ensure that they don't miss somebody. So it's not only having the information for the right people, but also avoiding the others to be spammed. Be more respectful with the time of others. So if you have objects, if you can communicate on objects, the system usually knows who is involved. The system knows who is the approvee, who is the assignee, and who is maybe also interested in that information and is watching the object. And one more point about granularity in your specifications. You see here a document, and in this document there are sections. Now, instead of approving the whole document, I can read sections and mark sections as approved. I can pick single sections and mark them as okay and others not as okay. And so instead of signing off a document where you already, to be honest, in how many projects have we signed off documents where we knew already that parts of it, well, they're not fully specified in a good way, and we will do it later on in the project. Here you have full control over the status and the approval of each requirement, and you can easily just mark the sections. And if you want, it freezes itself. So when a section is approved, it's not editable anymore. Let me tell you a story which happens I don't want to admit that it happens quite often, but it happens. I come home from work, and I say hello to my son, and I see him playing with his Lego. And the Lego are spread all over the floor. There is no possibility for me even to reach the couch without stepping on top of his Lego. So I tell him, hey, Tarek, could you please clean up the Legos? Maybe you just move them a little bit to the left so that I have enough space at least to walk to my couch. You can have 3/4 of the room, but please leave me that, because this is my comfort zone this evening. And guess what? No reaction. No reaction at all. So I tell her the second time, hey, Tarek, you know what happens? Nothing. And so after I speak up a little bit, suddenly he's looking at me. Wow, now we have eye contact. Now something is going on. And I tell him, hey, Tarek, please Could you clean up the Legos? Oh, sorry, Dad. I've forgotten. Yeah. I will do it in a minute. Fine. I have anyway something to do in the meantime, so I go into the kitchen room, drink something, do my stuff, come back. I hope I'm not the only one in the world where this is happening. So I come back. The Legos are still spread over the floor, and this is usually when I enter into escalation mode. Tarek, come on, please clean up your Legos. Put them in the box right now. I don't care anymore if it's 3/4 of the room. I want everything to be cleaned up. So we have this phase of ignoring at first. He ignores what I said, and then suddenly he forgets. And I enter into escalation mode. We don't want this to happen in our projects. We don't want to have a Lego escalation mode in a project, because usually it means there are no other ways to clean up. There's only one way to solve something. Unfortunately, I think this is also human behavior. People tend to forget. People tend to ignore what is uncomfortable. So they don't want to do stuff. That's natural. I don't want to do stuff that I don't like. So when I'm in a meeting and we capture the meeting notes, and maybe there's not a nice action item for me that I need to do, maybe stick to the story, clean up the Legos. I don't like to do that. But if you use Word or some other office tool for that, you will send probably an email, and I get the email and I look at the action item and I think, oh no, I don't want to do that. Oh, there is another email. Oh yes, I need to do this. So I'll tend to ignore the unliked activity and take some other activity first. And so the end of the day is there, and I can still do it tomorrow. Tomorrow the same, some other important things, and then suddenly I forget. To avoid this in your projects, it is essential that you keep track of the activities. That means you need to have objects for everything which is happening. Same for requirements, but same for action items in meetings. So we need an assignee, we need a due date when something should be finished. And now, when we track this meeting, we don't have only a meeting minute or a meeting report, but everybody has his own action items. So when I click on my personal cockpit here, I can see my clean up the Legos activity here. So even if I don't like it, even if I tend to ignore it, it will always be there. I will always be reminded, even if I want on my mobile phone, coming back to the mobile phones, as there is a Polar integration in the iPhone where you can see your activities. But yeah, that's a good way, because I sometimes don't like stuff I need to do, so I will be reminded. On the other side, there is a project manager who needs to keep control over these action items, over the Lego and cleanup activities in your project. So I want to see everybody, and I want to keep control what they are doing. So you can see here on top, this could be our Lego our cleanup activity. Here's called iPad user interface application, blah blah blah. But in the end, it's a requirement, and then below you can see an activity. Could be to clean up the Lego, could also be to clean up the Barbie, to clean up the PlayStation. So a lot of activity here. I can see the status of each of them, and I can see how my team is progressing. So it is essential that if you want to keep control over what's going on in your project, you need to have some way to control these activities. Otherwise, people tend to ignore or to forget them. Now let's come to another game that kids play, and I think it's quite international. It's called Broken Telephone, or I looked it up in a dictionary. There they translated as Chinese Whispers. In the end, this game is, we have a row of kids, and you tell a story to the first kid. Let's call him Frank. So you tell Frank the story, Frank repeats the story to the other kid in the row, and then finally it reaches the last kid. Let's call him Dan, and Dan has to repeat the story. And yeah, we all know there is some fun inside, because the story is a little bit different than at the beginning. Well, we have the same situation in our projects. We also have stories. The customer tells us. Each requirement in the end is a customer story which needs to be repeated, which needs to be translated into a system requirement, into a design requirement, into a test specification. So it's not only repeating, it's also translating, which makes it so difficult for us to really build what the customer wants. And unfortunately, it's not only one game, one Chinese whisper game or one broken telephone we need to control, but it's thousands. And now you can imagine why that guy is looking like he's looking, because how can you control that? I mean, it's a nightmare. And trust me, this is why in some projects, people spend one day a week just to keep control over the traceability, for example, in an Excel sheet. Now, speaking about comfort zones and the right tools, that's also something we tend to ignore and to forget. But what happens if some piece in the chain is missing? If some kid is taken away, is taken out of the row? Now, we change the story, change request. And I tell Frank a new story, and Dan sees already, oh, there is something going on. Something is happening. So he asks the kid sitting right to him, hey, is there anything going on? No. Keep going. The story is still the same. So Dan tells the same story. Dan builds the same product. Dan tests the same product. Now this is where the problem starts, because we cannot afford that. We cannot afford to build the wrong product. So you need to have control over the traceability and over the information in your project. Speaking about multiple chain, let's pick one chain and have a look at how this could look like in a project. So we have this first kit in a row, the customer wish, which is broken down into sub-requirements, into tasks, into test cases, into work packages, into tasks which are linked to a work package, down, you see this number here, down to some changes of files in the source code, down to the actual line of code which was changed in the code. So this chain, this is our one part of the 1,000 requirements we need to keep track. And so the first thing we need is to see and to be able to link the information together. The second thing we may be interested in is also to find the missing parts. So where is our game, our chain not yet finished? You need to control that all customer wishes have been transformed into system requirements. Here we see that the red part here has still some work to do, but we see it. And this is only possible if you have granularity, if you have single objects. Polarian call these objects work items. So without that, you will always have the Excel sheet or some way to track the traceability somewhere else. Or, for me, it's a good way to visualize what's going on in our different chains, because here we can see on the left side the requirements, for example, which are broken down into several test cases. For example, let's take this one, DP317, and we can see the defects which have been found. So it seems that Dan here tells us the wrong story, or at least some tests verified that there were problems in the story. And we can also see there are still missing links in our story. So how can we ensure, now that we have the traceability in the system, that we can identify where links are missing? How can we control, if the story is changing, that everyone is still up to date? It's quite simple, actually. The only thing you need to ensure is that somehow, that's always the funny thing, that somehow other people are notified when you change something, when there is a chain behind. So I have, on purpose, I have not changed something now, but I just show you the result of a change. So here you can see a requirement. There is a potential change impact. Now, I'm responsible for that one. So let's have a look at this one. And I'm now Dan. I want to understand what has been changed in the story, what has been told to Frank, which makes my electrical requirement not anymore consistent. Look at there on the top, we have 10% of variance tolerance here. There is a little question mark on that requirement. So let's have a look at this one. Seems to be something important here. Okay, good. There is a comment. That's good practice. So I can add a comment when I change something, but this is not all. I mean, we all know that people make mistakes. People tend to forget. And so looking at the history of this work item, I can see that here the tolerance was changed from 10 to 12%. And on top even, you see that before the demo, I did some changes here just with a empty space. But that's important, that's critical, because this is the new story I need to implement in my requirements. So much about the traceability. Let's have a look at another game. I don't know if every one of you likes soccer. Next year is the soccer championship in Brazil. Maybe you remember how Greece beat Portugal in 2004 in the European Championship. That was somehow amazing because Greece, nobody had them on their list. Nobody, really. You could have made a fortune by betting on Greece in the finals. Actually, they played 2 times against Portugal, the first game and the finals, the last game. And Portugal, I mean, they had the superstars. They had Figo, they had Ronaldo. He was already there by that time. So they had all these great players, but still Greece did it. How did they do that? What did they do? They had the right strategy and the right tactical approach. Their trainer looked at them. I don't know what he said, but probably he said, okay guys, there's probably only one way how we can win this thing, how we can bring this thing home. We play defense. And that's what they did. They played defense, and no other team was able to score. So from time to time, they scored 1 goal. And the funny thing is, they scored only so few goals that actually there were other teams in the championship which made more goals in the first round than Greece in the whole. That's really amazing. But what does it tell us for project? It tells us you don't need the superstars, but you need the right strategy. You need the right approach in your projects. Not every project is the same. So take what is good practice and implement it in your project. It could be Scrum, it could be vModel, it could be some standard that you need to follow. Here you can see some example of strategies that are provided out of the box by Polarion, so that you don't need the superstars really. Or you create your own strategies and save them as templates. So once you did that, all new projects can take the same strategy because they are guided. There is a lot of stuff inside already, like configurations, reports, documents, which help your players to be successful. So here is an example of a customer who left the comfort zone and started with Polarion. He used to, a customer is called Spansion. It used to be Fujitsu. So they have used Office, Word, and Excel to manage their requirements. And they immediately gained, after some months, they stated that they saved 80% of their effort just in the area of traceability. I just imagine the effort you have to keep things consistent with Excel or other means. It's also a nice example of a customer because it's not too big. It's like 120 users distributed along the world. We have people working in China with Chinese localization, in Japan. And they also value the possibility to have these strategies, these templates. So they are able to build their own workflow, which they say reduces the errors that people make. Why is that? I mean, if you have fields you require for specific phases in your workflow, you can ensure that information is there when it is needed. If you have, for example, the possibility to freeze part of the document when you approve sections, you can avoid that people change these sections by mistake. Polarion did a ISO 26262 certification internally, so that was a plus for them, but also the openness of the product. So actually, they had not the chance to start with one installation. most of you have a similar situation, I guess, that you have already tools in place. So they had this setup. They had Polarion for the core disciplines like config management, change management, defect tracking, and quality management, these functional disciplines which goes across the different phases. And for the high-level requirements management specifications, they use Polarion as well, the left side of the V. Then for the design, they had already Enterprise Architect in place. You can see here, I hope you can see my mouse. So they used the integration to have the models inside Enterprise Architect and link them with their requirements. The whole right side, they had already a system from VectorCast which they used to test all levels, basically, starting from unit tests up to the highest level. The benefit they gained with the Polarion integration was really to have this chain. You remember the chain of the broken telephone, so they really could understand which part of the specification is covered by a test case and which is not, and what was the result. So if you like this, if you think, oh, maybe that's an interesting solution for me or for my company, you have several options how you can use it. As expansion, for example, they have their own server. You have full control over what's going on with your own IT, or you use the cloud solution where you basically log in and everything is ready to go. You can choose something in the middle, which is a dedicated server where you have control over the server, which may be interesting if you want to build own extensions, own plugins, and just get a little bit more control over what's happening on the server. Yeah, I'm coming already to an end of this presentation, and actually I want you to remember that whenever you pick your favorite jeans or jacket out of the wardrobe, that Polarion can help you to leave the office comfort zone. I want you next time when you see your son or your daughter, when all the Legos spread along the floor, that you think about how Polarion can help you to keep track of the Lego activities in your project. And in the end, that you can have the right strategy and the right templates with Polarion to support your projects, so that even without the superstars, you will have successful projects. In that sense, thank you everybody for listening. I'm open to your questions now. If you want to know more about the product or download it, go to our website. There will be a free 30-day trial that you can download, or you can try it live in the cloud, or request a proof of concept and just call us and we will make it happen. So thank you everybody. Let's see what questions you have. There is one question sent to me privately in the chat, which is tracking of suspects. You just showed, I just showed how you can see the result of something was changed, but how is this propagation of changes, how is this done? It's quite simple, because in Polarion, maybe I can even show you here. So whenever you change something, you have the option to save it, or you can say save and suspect. And when you choose save and suspect, it means let the system identify all the objects which are linked with that item, and they will get the suspect information. This is something you can also switch on from the beginning or in a specific phase. So whenever something is changed, automatically this suspect is propagated. You can also link that to your workflow. So, for example, if you change the workflow from approved to undergoing change, then such a suspect is propagated. There is a question here from. The question is, who receives a notification of a suspect? That's also an interesting question, because maybe you don't want to have everybody get notified by a suspect, maybe only the owner. That's something you can configure. What's happening, a suspect is updating the items which are linked to that requirement. And then there are notification settings that can control which role gets a notification. So it can be based on roles, so you can ensure not everybody gets a notification, but only specific people. Yes, so also the author or watchers. That's a matter of configuration. There is a question regarding the configuration itself. So do you have to have these objects which Polarion brings in, like system requirements, mechanical requirements, or can you change them? The question definitely is yes. So you can define your own work item types and start small. So we have customers which only track 2 levels of requirements. They have customer wishes and they have requirements. And then usually they add tasks and defects, but it's up to you. And there are nice templates on our extension portal, which you can download and have a look at different strategies, different templates to configure it. It's not difficult to do, so you can try it yourself. Download it, have a look at the administration. I'm sure you will easily find it, how you can create own work item types. There is a question. Do you have a report wiki page able to provide a one-view synthesis, I hope I pronounce this right, of change impacts? There's not such a wiki page there, but it's easy to create such a page because Polarion has SQL query, it has query possibilities in the system, so you can easily create a page which shows for one selected object, for a change request, all linked requirements, all linked test cases, all linked features, whatever you want, grouped in whatever way. It's not a big effort. It's not there out of the box, but it can be easily created. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining this webinar. Don't forget the genes, the Legos, and Greece versus Portugal. In that sense, have a good day, have a good evening, and thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.